Go.
Okay. Chris, this is going to be, and Chris and Bryce. Bryce, can you hear me? I knew it. He's sleeping.
Well, you got is
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm good.
I'm just messing with you too. Okay, that's my contact information. People ask me what I used to do in my life. I came from New Jersey. I joined the Air Force in '72. I was a C-130 flight engineer. No war stories unless we're sitting at a bar over a Guinness. I retired in '94. I was the chief flight engineer. I spent 2 years at 71st High School setting up and running their computer lab for a close friend of mine who we lost over Thanksgiving. Right now, I'm currently a DoD contractor for Air Force Headquarters AMC, and that's going to end February 20th because I'm going to retire. And I'm married to Loretta for 49 years. Yes, dear, and I'm sorry, the 4 words: maintain a long relationship.
God bless her. She's an angel.
My officiating background, I was a North Carolina AU supervisor for officials for girls basketball. I was a national official for boys basketball. I was a signer for the private schools in Fayetteville. And I did their Fayetteville Parks and Rec youth football assigner. I was a national USC for a softball association. And I'm the regional supervisor for girls and boys lacrosse. And these are all the sports I officiated. Baseball, everything was at the high school level. I did some basketball at the NCAA level, and I did a couple of years at the semi-pro level in football. Everybody needs to know when I have conversations regarding scheduling and officials or game incidents, I only talk to school administration. Okay, I don't talk to coaches. I talk to either the student activities director, and those of you in Cumberland County know that's David Culbreth, or I talk to the school athletic director. Okay. Coaches wanting to discuss game incidents or officiating, they have to go through their ADs. So don't have to worry about them giving me a call because they don't call me. If they have an issue, they have to send it through the ADs. They have to email. I'll get a copy of the email. I look at the NFHS video. I talk with the officials. And for coaches that don't want to go through the AD, then if I have to reply, then I go through their principal and their AD, which usually that stops that conversation. Okay, but understanding rule questions and interpretations or application of rule, I've got no problem in talking with coaches. Okay, I still use an Arbiter Sports. Okay, it will be duplicated in Dragonfly so officials can get paid. And in Dragonfly, I put you in Dragonfly, and it's either me or John Owens going to help with that process. We'll go ahead and accept the game for you in Dragonfly, but in Arbiter, you have to accept it. All North Carolina officials will get new invites, and you guys can ignore that unless Brandon, if you want to get added to my Arbiter, you just let me know. Did somebody just try to come in?
Yes, I got it. Mandela just came in.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, for out-of-state officials, and this was because I applied for the Raleigh, and there's a lot of out-of-state officials on that Raleigh's roster, so this was concerning the Raleigh Association, because there's a lot of officials from Virginia or South Carolina on that roster, and I would be removing them, putting them in contacts. So in Arbiter, you need to keep your blocks updated. And for new officials, Mr. John Owens has an excellent video on training you how to update your blocks in Arbiter and experience with Arbiter. When I make assignments, you'll have 72 hours to accept a game. Okay. So after 72 hours, you automatically get removed. Now, if you need more time because of work or your scheduling, just let me know. I'll go in there and say, okay, I need another week. I said, okay. I'll go ahead and change it to whatever day you and I work out, okay? And the reason why I say that is because normally my entire season is scheduled before opening day, okay? So you can see that in your calendar that you have a game pending.
It's a little different down here, Brandon.
I was going to say, can you help Rick out on that one, JJ?
Yeah. If Rick went, because I did both boys and girls, the girls filled me up and I started blocking Rick out. He learned He said, why are you blocking out? I said, Rick, I gave you 2 weeks.
Huh,
I gave you 2 weeks.
I like it.
All right. So the other thing is your administrative requirements have to be complete, and that's when I start scheduling. Usually right after the state clinic, I start scheduling. I don't publish anything, but I start scheduling. I'll publish the first 2 weeks or so. So everybody can, start getting their stuff together in their calendar, and then probably a next week or two after that, I publish the rest of the season. Usually I go a month at a time. I do March, halfway through March, and then I'll finish out March, and then I'll do all of April, because that's how long the season is. Because usually at the end of April is when the postseason starts. Okay. Now the other thing is I've had officials not receive any games, and then they wanted to know why. And the reason why is because they didn't complete their requirements. Okay. And the requirements was all the registration, all their booking fees, all the NCHSA fees, the concussion course, and stuff like that. If that's all complete, I start assigning games. For scrimmages and play days, especially on the girl side, they call them play days or jamborees. I try to use self-assign, and you guys sign up for it. All right, declining and turning back games. This is the big heartbreaker for everybody. Declining assignments. I just need short comments, because you'll get a little pop-up to say why you're declining the game. And this is real simple. Spouse. That's all I need. That's the War Department. Family, work, and last but least, I messed up, which means you did something with all of those above. So you just can't work that day. You need to turn the game back. I don't need a whole bunch of, I don't like reading. One word's finally with me, except for that last one. I messed up. All of the above. Okay. Same thing with turning back assignments. Call me up. No worries. It happens. Okay. But when you turn back an assignment, if you need to turn one back, just email me, call me, or text. But you need to get a reply back from me. All right. Because I can't, don't be guaranteed. And then after I take you off the game, you will get a text email from Arbiter. And John, did they send out text email from Dragonfly yet?
They will send notifications through Dragonfly.
Notifications, but not a text.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So if you don't receive an Arbiter notification, a text that you were removed, please give me a call. Okay. And if you need to turn back a game, I need as much time as possible so I can find a replacement, because obviously our officials are short in lacrosse, and we need to, sometimes I need to play musical refs. Okay. In your Arbiter profile, make sure it is updated. Emergency contact and cell phone number. We've had situations where we had officials go down on the field, and now we have to try to call the significant other to let them know. So that was a good thing, because the official that was with the official was a close friend and knew the spouse. Okay. If you're multi-sport officials, please share your schedule with the other regional supervisors, because it's real easy. And like Rick, to give you a perfect example, Brandon, in your area, Rick will call me up and ask me, hey, can I use this guy, or can I use that guy? And I say, Rick, is he open on the schedule? He goes, yeah. I says, okay, thank you for calling me, but you can use him because he's open. The reason why I schedule so fast is because we have multi-sport officials in this association. And we communicate with the other RSSOs before we even have to take somebody from another sport, in our area. There was one official that does softball. I called the RSO and said, hey, do you have another official to replace this gentleman if I need him for lacrosse? Because I had a cancellation out and I only had one lacrosse official left. So he said, yeah, we'll work it out. So he didn't even know this was going on, but my last hope accepted the game. But if you share that out, I can see if Brandon, if you're working, living in Fuquay and you need to call Union Pines, if I have somebody short, I'll play musical refs and move that guy for Union Pines and put Brandon on it if you want to. If another supervisor needs you to work and you want to work that game, then I'll make every effort to release you, but don't you get caught between regional supervisors. You just say, JJ, Rick needs me. I say, okay, let me call Rick and we'll work it out, and he'll send me somebody else, or if I have to move the game time or whatever to get another official on it, that I got no problem releasing officials to go work for another game, especially if it's a competitive game and he needs you. So don't get stuck between the rocks. You have to let the supervisors work it out, because you have to realize supervisors talk. And as we found out in Dragonfly, we can see where officials are working, regardless of what account you're in. Like in Dragonfly, we can see everybody. But if I can look in Brandon's account and say, okay, he's got a game from Rick, I know I can't use him. Okay, so, but in Dragonfly, we can see every game in the state. So don't get caught telling the supervisor you need to get out of this game because your grandmother died for the 10th time, but then he finds you working for another supervisor. And Brandon, I see you smiling, but that has happened. All right, Arbiter game. We give this to the schools. This is for the schools. If they don't want to use Dragonfly for the private schools, I can add them to Arbiter game. Dragonfly, it's required by the NCHSAA. It allows the schools to pay the officials via Dragonfly. So that's why we're going to duplicate those assignments in Dragonfly so the schools can pay you.
And
Okay.
I will be given a Dragonfly clinic in the future to give
Okay.
the highlights for all the officials.
And I'll use Arbiter Pay for some of the private schools that come through us. Right now it's Fayetteville Academy. Okay. And this is where assignments will be duplicated to allow schools to pay for officials. And you'll see JO. And the reason why I put that in there to remind me that sometimes in Dragonfly, you might see John Owens' name as the person that assigned you that game in Dragonfly, because he will be helping me duplicate those games in Dragonfly so you can get paid. Okay. And that's also where the NCHSA requires you to track your administrative requirements. NCHSA registration, SSOA. Everybody else that's out of our area is considered a guest. Concussion courses tracked, state and local clinics are tracked, and the assigning fee, except for the guest guys when we need them. Communication with partners. This is imperative. Referees need you to communicate with your partners. Okay. Try to do it at least 24 hours prior to game time. Usually I sent out all my stuff on Sunday for the week. Email, send them a text. You can call them on the phone. You can leave a voicemail, but you have to get a reply. If you don't get a reply, it doesn't count. So basically, I would avoid voicemails. Make them call you back. Leaving a message with somebody else. We found out in football up in a triangle that you call one guy's house, you talk to his daughter to coordinate the game, and the daughter doesn't pass the message on to the dad. So leaving a message with someone is not good. So don't recommend doing that. So for the partners who are not in a referee slot, always reply to the referee and include your other partners. Okay. If you don't have to wait on the referee to contact you, if you see it, you can send a text or email to the referee, say, hey, we got a game. I'll meet you at the field, or where do you want to meet to drive? But at least way guys are communicating. Okay. The way I do referees and field judges and stuff like that, you might not be the most experienced guy on the crew, but you might be the referee. And I do that after the first year or two or whatever, to get you some experience up there managing the game. Okay. If you don't hear from your ref, then you contact them. Okay. If you can't contact your partners, you need to give me a call. Okay. There may be a situation that we are not unaware of. As an example, one official didn't show up to the game. It was not in this area. He usually not late or doesn't show up, but so they stopped at his house on the way home, and it turned out he was on the way to the game riding a motorcycle and was in a wreck and was killed. So if you don't hear from your partners, give us a call and I will try to track them down or send you a replacement. So here's an officiating test for you. Who's responsible for calling fouls, violation, and applying the prescribed penalties? Okay, it's rhetorical. It's one of these guys right here, right? It's going to be the officials. Well, officiating a game, has anybody ever heard someone saying, hey, that's a foul? Everybody's heard that once or twice. Nobody's ever heard this one, though. Okay? Unsportsmanlike conduct. Wikipedia has a definition. It's right there. Poor sportsmanship is a foul. It violates the sport's general accepted rules of sportsmanship and participate conduct. Pet peeve. It's a contributing factor for affecting the shortage of availability. It's gained national attention. Solutions are being developed at all organizations. All right. And we're going to, most of them include educate, some form of education, including educating the parents. There's only two groups that can actually act on poor sportsmanship. Officials, and you need to penalize it when it happens. And you need to penalize those unsporting comments, and don't accept I was talking to my team or I was talking to my player. If you hear it, just penalize it. That's the only way it's going to get fixed up, because we're the only ones that can enforce the penalty. You can educate everybody all you want, but we're the only ones that enforce the penalty. The other group is the game day administrators. So this is also going to be presented to athletic directors. We need them to be proactive. I was at a basketball game one time, and that AD came up to me at in between quarters, and he said, JJ, just say the word. And I looked at him, I said, say the word for what? He said, that guy up there is giving you guys hell. And he says, I think he's been drinking. And if those of you who do basketball know that once you're on a court with a big gym, you really can't hear people up there. And I just looked at that AD and say, don't wait for me to stop this game to take care of that guy. You need to take care of it now. So that's the big, a lot of times ADs think they don't have that authority, but it's a school event. Okay. So I'm telling them not to wait for an official to stop the game. Okay. Here's a process of changing human behavior. So why do we have to talk about human behavior? Because we want to change that behavior. Sporting behavior is words or actions by players, coaches, bench personnel, sideline and end line personnel, or spectators. Now, there's a difference between sideline and end line personnel and spectators. At a lacrosse game, sometimes you'll get people on the sideline that are not part of the team, but they're like parents or booster club people. So who's responsible for them? That's going to be the game day administrator also. And basically they're going to have to, if they're interfering with your game or making those comments, they got to leave also. Put them back up in the stands. And not you put them back up in the stands, you let the coach or the game day administrator do that. Okay.
Hey, JJ, did you decide, are we gonna put the game day administrator's name in the book?
That's the NCHSAA requirement. And if they don't have a book, that's what that penalty report is good for. You can just pencil it on there. And I'll get to that when we get there. So on sporting behavior, for the players, for the girls game, we have the card. For the boys games, you have a flag. Coaches, same thing, card or flag. Bench personnel, card or flag, and that also goes to who? The head coach, right? Now, the coach or the game day administrator takes care of anybody on the sideline or the end line personnel. Because you're going to have sometimes you'll have a sideline personnel that came with the visiting team. And when you go to the head coach for the home team and say, coach, we need to have that guy removed, put back up in the stands if he's not part of your team. Because that's what it said. Well, he's not part of our team. Okay, well, we need the game day administrator to put him back up in the spectators' seat. Usually that stops them from making any more of those comments. Okay. Spectators are non-game personnel. That's all done by the game day administrator and or the head coach if he's not there. some sites like Pinecrest has one game day administrator, but he's covering a softball event, a baseball event, and a lacrosse event. So sometimes you might have to just revert back to the coach. Okay, if the game is stopped to address spectator behavior, the spectator is to be removed from the game, then you don't start the game until he's gone. Okay? Officials will put it on the game report. And we will notify the NCHSAA. Here's something. The code of conduct is available for each student and faculty member at the start of every school year. As you can tell, I used to work in the school system for a couple of years. And it specifies the acceptable behavior and lists certain behaviors that are not acceptable. And it also lists the consequences for faculty and students that don't adhere to it. And I sat around the table and I'm looking through the code of conduct book with a bunch of principals and assistant principals, and they said, JJ, what are you looking for? I said, that's what I was looking for. Exceptions to athletic events. They said, there ain't none. So expect the same behavior an administration expects from faculty and students when they're on campus. And that field of play is part of the campus. Or that coliseum that the school is playing at is an athletic event that's sponsored by the school. So I expect the same. Behavior modification. Somebody had a question?
No, Asepi was just showing the fashionably late.
Sorry.
Okay. Let me go to the next slide here. Here's the misconduct rule for the girls. Okay. Bunch of words in there, but I highlighted the ones that are important for the girl side. Repeated major fouls, same or by the same or different player or team. So it could be a player on one team and that gets a yellow card for misconduct because of repetitive fouls, but that yellow card serves as a warning for everybody on the field. Okay. Excessive or rough or dangerous and sportsmanlike play. Persistent or flagrant violation of the rules. There's 5 fouls in the girls' game that are yellow cards. If they keep doing it, don't just give them a card and get them out. Officials may use either a yellow warning or a red ejection card for misconduct. Issuance of cards should be considered a warning for everybody on the field, regardless of who gets it. So if you give it to a player on the bench, the head coach gets charged with it, and everybody on the field and on the bench of the other team serves as the warning. Okay? Persistent infringement. We get a lot of times in the girls' game, or even in the boys' game, it's slashes, but in the girls' game, it's a cross check, horizontal stick. They push on the girl because there's no contact in the girls' game. But in the boys' game, there's a lot of whacking going on with the stick, which we call slashing. It jeopardizes the safety of the players. Okay, and it's on the girls' game, first opportunity, call the foul, even if it's borderline. Second offense, call the foul and verbally warn the player. And the third offense, give me a yellow card. And that serves for everybody on the field of play. So if somebody from the other team does a cross check and pushes somebody with the cross, they get a yellow card too. They don't get warnings. You already gave everybody a warning with the first one. Okay, the fourth yellow card, any player, either team. And my expectation is that you continue to card them because after they get their fourth card, they start playing down. And we've had that happen. Side note, I have not received any complaints or concerns that officials are issuing too many cards or throwing too many flags. At least I haven't from the coach. The boys' game, we can talk about too many flags. Major fouls, call it. Call it, verbally warn it, and then card it. I used the strike 3 method when I was calling the girls. And I did the same thing for the boys with the slashes and whatever. Issue cards from then on. Applies to players on both teams. This is what I found interesting on the boys' side. Persistent infringement is not defined. Okay? There has been conversations I've had with officials about the games running so long on some games. That's because officials were calling too many fouls. So that's why we're letting slashes go by that were kind of mediocre. So in boys game, when does the player foul out, right? They accumulate 5 minutes of personal foul times. How do we speed up the game? You flag it the first time it happens. You step up the penalty time after that. First time they get 1 minute. We have found that some players will continue to foul and get that slash and get in the box, and they'll do it 4 times because officials only give them what? 1 minute for a slash. 1 minute for a slash. When they get to 4 minutes, they stop. Then the next guy does it. I had a game between Holly Springs and Fuquay Arena. By halftime, I told the other 2 officials, hey, we need to step up our penalty time because they're not stopping. So we started stepping up the penalty time to 2 minutes and 3 minutes just for a slash. We fouled out 5 players, but we didn't have a fight. Okay, so that's my recommendation, that if they don't stop, just up the penalty time in this way, you can go from 1 minute to 3 minutes. Your judgment on how the game's going. You go from 1 minute slash to a 3 minute slash, they got 4 minutes. Guess what? They're going to be good. Otherwise, they're going to be sitting down. And I'm not going to discuss that with coaches or ADs. All right, they accumulate 5 minutes. So you flag it the first time, it's going to set the tone. This is what we're not. John, give that story that you got from Pinecrest, coach.
I'm forgetting which story that is.
When Pinecrest was playing at home and they were playing somebody from Raleigh.
Oh, they got killed and they only got 1 minute for it. And that almost caused the fight. And so, but when the players started fouling out, they came down here and played, and the play cleaned up real quickly because, when we were down here, with our officials, we started upping the penalty time. 3 players fouled out in the first half, and it magically cleaned up and played the game legally.
Yeah. I have a clip of one game from one of our teams playing up there in Raleigh, and what had happened was he got blindsided, no doubt about it.
Defenseless player and targeting.
Yeah. And all he got was 1 minute locked in. But and that's when I told the guys, I said, now continue to watch the player because he subbed out. He took his helmet off, went on the other side of the track to the trash can and threw up and spent the night in the hospital. Okay, so we have to be aware of those unnecessary hits. If they're running down the sideline and all it takes is a little push to push him out, then go ahead and push him out. But if he's running down the sideline and somebody comes and cleans his clock, that's an unnecessary hit. Okay, that's enough of that. And that, if they continue fouling, just step up the penalty time. Referees are responsible for the reports. Put the score in. Make sure officials showed on time or late. If officials running late, call your partners. We know it happens because they're going from one game to the next. But as the referee on the game, don't put down he showed up on time. If he showed late, he showed late. Just put it down. It's not a worry. Make sure you notify your partners. Call or text me. I call the school, the AD, and say, hey, the guy's leaving. The game went into overtime. He's leaving. He's on his way. He says, okay. I had a school wait an hour and a half. They're understanding when we give them a heads up. If you don't call them, then they're calling me, and then I'm calling you and say, how come you didn't call us? Just put it in the comment section if you have a yellow card or a flag where you have it at DQ. Injection for the boys. 2 yellow cards for players, a DQ only. It's not soccer where they get 2 and an ejection, you have to report it. So it's just disqualified, just like fouling out. If it's a red card, then obviously it's an ejection. And guess what? We have a penalty report, and we will get into that later. The officials are now sending me a picture of the penalty report we have.
It's much easier on Dragonfly.
Yeah. Official who ejected a player files the report link and password is on the arbiter and dashboard with the instructions, and because it's in Dragonfly. Call me. I'm going to need a heads up because I'm going to get a call. I'll pull up the NFHS video and I review the video because sometimes not all information is relayed to the AD. Okay. These are the mandatory ejection for the NCHSA has put into effect. Flagrant contact is now there from a situation we had last year with Lacrosse. We had a player just had one of those unnecessary hits where he went and purposely cleaned the guy's clock, and it was called a flagrant, but it wasn't listed, so now it's listed. Biting, taunting, baiting, spitting, profanity. Let's back up to profanity for a minute. If you hear profanity, people say, okay, he said this, he said that, but if it's between you, him, and you're standing next to him and it's whispered, that's your decision. But if he says it loud enough for everybody to hear it, there's no decision. Because I'm going to get a call. There was a situation where I'm standing on the track next to the AD, and there was a foul, and then there was a second flag. There was a flag and then a second flag. And the AD said, what happened? I said, well, he's getting a flag for the penalty, for the slash. I said, but that second foul is probably because he cursed. And that's exactly what happened. He came over, profanity, he was gone. A little bit later, they're going up and down, and the AD goes, hey, did you hear that? And I said, hear what? Evidently, one of the players or coaches from the sideline had used a little bad word, but the referee gave him a warning. So there was inconsistency there, and now I'm having to explain to the AD, I didn't hear it. So, but I did have to answer it later.
Hey,
Obviously-
JJ,
Yeah,
do you want them to see a ejection report now? I have one pulled up.
I've got it on the slide here.
Okay.
I've got it on a slide. Disrespecting, addressing, or contacting an official. Tobacco products, I haven't seen anybody do that yet. I got an email from a coach stating there were multiple flagrant fouls during the game and no calls. Okay. She described in detail a flagrant cross-check on the goalie. She was out of the circle, airborne, trying to catch a pass. She called it a flagrant cross-check, which caused a season-ending injury. Suggested the visiting team should be barred from playing lacrosse. I did not respond to her email as she did not go through the AD. Okay. So to give you an idea of why sometimes I like to get a heads up, these are the facts that was not in the email or that she was aware of. The incident occurred with about 3 seconds left to go in the first half. There were 2 seasoned multi-sport officials with state championships in different sports on the game. I reviewed the NFHS network video and made a clip of the goal when the goalie was injured. Okay. It showed 0 contact. She rolled her ankle when she landed, and I was at the game watching it from the sidelines. And some of you know that I usually roam up and down the track watching the game. And the goalie was her daughter. So just to give you an idea of what we have to deal with sometimes. And I never received a complaint from or concern from the AD. Okay. If a situation arises in your game, let me know ASAP. Send me a text. If you're not sure I'll get a call or not, call me anyway. Okay. Because before I talk to the AD, I would like time to pull up your game on the Federation Network and review it. Okay. Here's another situation. A girls' game, 1 team. They were issued 5 yellow cards. Okay. 2 players were DQ'd, disqualified. The team played down because after they get 4 yellow cards, they start playing down. I received a call from the assistant coach whose daughter ended up with a concussion. I usually don't talk to coaches, but because this assistant coach is also involved with the youth programs, he had my number. Okay. So he did call and he made sure that he was not complaining about the officials as they were making the calls and issuing cards. Okay. I received a pitch of the scorebook showing all the cards that were issued. 1 player had 6 major fouls and never received a card. Okay. Because sometimes when you got so many fouls going on, it's hard to keep track. But the officials did a good job. I watched the game. They were making the calls. So I say we because me and John, we designed this form for the girls. So there's always somebody at the table sitting with the stat person, because the stat person is a student and they always have their friend with them. Well, this is a job for their friend. This is the top side and this is the bottom side for the visiting team, but you have the player number, and if they have a major foul, if obviously if they get major fouls, then they start getting yellow cards. That third major foul, there better be a yellow in there. Because at halftime, the officials go over to the table, they'll look at this card, and they can see who has all the major fouls. For those new officials, you'll see where'd Mandela go?
She's on there.
Is she? Okay, I don't see her on my doohickey. You'll see, if you see a player with 3 or 4 major fouls, they need a card. But if you see a player with 1 or 2, if you get 1 major foul, there better be some preventive officiating there. So you understand, if you get another one, you're going to be sitting out. Okay. Now, here's the one for the boys. Okay, there's a player number, the penalty, and then the time they went in or the time they get released. However they do it, it's up to the referee and the stat person keeping it. Because if they get a 1 minute penalty, and it's 7:42, and they got 1 minute penalty, they don't come out of the penalty box until 6:42. Because that's the question they're going to get asked. When do they come out? 6:42. So it's right there for them. And if they get 5 minutes penalty time, then they're out. At halftime, I expect officials to take a look at that.
Hey, and guys, just FYI for those of you, we'll send you this file. Your referee should have a copy of it when they go to the game, because they won't have it. On the other side, it has the instructions for your timer, and your scorekeeper. And so it gives them the information. That way it's kind of like your pregame speech, like we give in football to the clock operators. It has all the information for the clock operators.
Okay. Get back to a situation why we started the table forms. We had a boys game where the table form was used, because right now we were designing it and playing with it. A player was ejected for a flagrant hit. Okay. I received a message from the AD that the coach disagreed with the ejection, and this is while the game was going on. I made a clip from the NFHS network because I'm watching the game. So I have a clip. And the situation, all 3 refs, because it happened right at the top of the box and right in front of the goal. So all 3 refs were watching it, and 3 flags go up. Okay. They all got together, and probably within 30 seconds, the guy leaving the center going to the table reported an ejection, and I had no problem with it. Okay. I reviewed the table form. Well, to go back to the foul, it was this big 225-pound linebacker that somebody says he has a power cradle. And he took out this 125-pound kid and just cleaned his clock. Flags went, he's ejected. Okay. I informed the AD it was a good ejection. Okay. So the next game, home game they had, I went to the next home game. The coach and I talked about unnecessary hits, because it was a legal body check, but it was totally unnecessary where he cleaned his clock. I showed him a pic of the table form that the referee sent me, because instead of waiting for the clinics or something like that to bring it to me, he just sent me a pic right quick using a smartphone. I pointed out that the team had 16 minutes of penalty time. Quarters are 12 minutes, just like in football, 4 12-minute quarters. So basically for 16 minutes, over a quarter, he played a man down, and sometimes 2 men down. They lost the game 15-16. And his response to me was, "Can I keep this form?" Did not realize how much time he had people in the penalty box. Okay. So that's why we use those forms. And basically it helps me when I have to go talk to the coach, when the AD asks me to come down and talk to him about that hit. And then when I do that, there's nothing they can say. So that's why it's imperative that you send me a pic of the table form. Okay? Okay, Zoom. As you can see, I will use Zoom extensively for clinics, advisory committee meetings. If I have an advisory committee, if providing on the girl side, I'll have a weekly how it goes meeting. I like that because Raleigh did it. It's not mandatory, but as the season progresses on Sundays, we'll have a Zoom meeting where you guys have a problem at the game, just log in and tell us about the problem and we'll fix it. Or if I have to address it with an AD. But if you don't feel like logging in and staying watching football or something, that's fine. So I'll have it on Sundays at 6. If we have issues with sites, field markings, personnel on sideline, game management issues, coaches on the field, I expect that to be addressed. I'm not saying you have to flag them or card them, but address it. And I think we're going to have issues this year because everybody's using a unified field. In the girls' game, the coaches were allowed to go all the way down to the end line. On the boys' side, they had a box. Well, this year they've shortened up that box for the penalty box, which gave the coaches a little bit more room, but neither the boys or the girls can go down to the end line now. Okay. Oops. So if there's any issues I need to engage with the AD, just let me know and we will take care of it. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, JJ, I got 3 questions.
Go.
The first one is, why is it that the spectators are allowed to be on the field?
I didn't say spectators. I said sideline personnel, because we don't know who they are. There are times that some schools at lacrosse games, I'm going to take a perfect example, like at Pinecrest. Let's say like the bus driver or a team sponsor or the team mom or whatever. They come down and they usually don't, there's usually never a problem. But if there is possibility, and I've seen it, but not down in our area, I don't call them spectators because you really don't know who they are. They could be a statistician, but they are not spectators because they're not outside the fence and they're not up in the stands. But if they're not, if you go to the head coach and he says they're not with me, then you get the game day administrator and say, okay, we need to get him out of here.
Okay.
Okay. Now on the other token, because we've had some schools that have the statistician, but sometimes they get excited. And I say, coach, I said, you got to get him back up here or get him on the track. And that usually they comply. But if they're not bothering you, if they're not saying nothing, we leave them alone. But if they interfere with the game, then, and I'm saying interfere with the game, you know, that little verbal warning, I like warnings, coach, you know, my stop sign, but I only give that once. Okay, next question.
Okay, you said that you start assigning games after the state clinic.
Yes.
I know that's in the local association, but I didn't jot it down right quick because I know that you might start assigning somewhere during the basketball playoff, right?
Okay.
So you happen to know when that is, so I know how to adjust my my blocks and arbiter, because that's going to go into my next question.
No, don't worry about blocking, because like I said, if Errol calls me and says, JJ, I'm using Chris for a playoff game, you won't have a game that day for lacrosse.
That take care of it then.
That takes care of everything.
Yeah.
And I'll call Errol. I did the same thing with softball and baseball. If somebody's needed to cover some baseball games and I have somebody to come and I can cover, I said, okay, no problem, go. Because our job in SSOA, because we're a multi-sport association, we want to make sure games are covered.
Okay.
I have no problem, and schools have been very accommodating when I call them up and say, I need to push your game to 6:30. And they say, okay.
Well, the blocks tie into my last question.
Okay.
Knowing now that you're going to be using an arbiter to assign the games, the schools will not have no dealings with the Dragonfly when it comes to if they wanted to cancel or anything like that. So I don't have to worry about blocks in the Dragonfly for
Correct.
lacrosse, right?
Correct.
Because that's what I did with
Yeah.
basketball. I didn't do no blocks for basketball in arbiter because there was no need.
Right.
So
Yeah,
my
because Errol does not maintain an arbiter account anymore.
right. So all my blocks and stuff with lacrosse need to be in the arbiter and so forth.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. That's it.
And if you have a concern about basketball postseason, I will contact Errol and ask Errol and say, okay, these are the dates I have for my officials. Do they interfere with any of your schedule for basketball? I got no problem in releasing. If you're doing the postseason, that's just like in college when you got a Division I game and somebody calls me up and says, hey, I need you to take this before arbiter was in existence. Now I'm telling my age. They call you up and say, hey, I need you to go over here and do this Division II game. Then they expected us to call the Division III supervisor and say, hey, I need to get released to go do a Division II game. What we try to do is I tell the guy, say, hey, I've got a Division III game scheduled that night. So he would call the Division III assigner and get me released. So you let the regional supervisors work that out.
Okay.
I don't want to put officials in between regional supervisors, and I'm not going to put you in a position to make one mad either.
Okay. Okay. That was it.
That it?
Yes,
Good.
sir.
That was good questions. Bryce?
The the only thing I will say to add on, we're working on finalizing on-field clinic. It'll be last week in January, first week in February is what we're looking at. Hopefully we'll have that finalized this week, so you'll get to see and have an on-field clinic before we actually get out on the field.
That's good information to know. I know me personally because with my soccer supervisor, we don't get into it no more years and years ago because see, I work on the weekends too, on Saturdays and Sundays. Mostly, definitely Saturday mornings. So by me knowing ahead of time when those clinics, I can make an adjustment on my work schedule on Saturdays.
Yeah, so we should hopefully know this. We're gonna try to put out a date by the end of the week.
Cool.
Okay, let me make sure I get everybody. Oh, and Brandon. Hey, Brandon.
I already
Yes,
got you
sir.
the list and already sent it to Rick, so you're good to go, JJ.
Okay, never mind.
Appreciate it, John.
You're welcome. And Rick's already responded.